Well, welcome everybody, and it's great to be back in our little outdoor studio here in Lanzarote. We got back to the island last night from our trip to Doha to watch the Qatar Grand Prix. It was a great trip, thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's always nice to be home. Now this week we're going to be talking about the new laws or new rules that are coming into effect for guest registration on the island. We're going to talk about camel rides, we'll discuss paraglider and hang glider accidents, and we'll be talking about the Virgin of Los Dolores and her ascent into Arrecife. And as I do every week, I'll be giving you 3 things you should be doing on the island next week if you're here. But first, let me thank those of you who picked up on the fact that my voice sounded a little bit funny in the video we shot last week for the news in Doha. I had a cold. I picked it up on the flight from London to Doha, and everyone seemed to be coughing and spluttering on that flight, and almost inevitably I woke up with a cold the following day. The first time I've had a cold for, I think, about 4 years. So I've been fine and it's not been an issue. It didn't slow me down at all, but I still sound a bit weird, although I feel completely fine. But anyway, thanks for your concern and your get well wishes. It was much appreciated. Now on with the news. There have been calls to stop camel rides in Timanfaya by a Swiss animal welfare organisation. And they're saying that the tourists who are being given rides are too heavy for the camels now. They're suggesting the camels aren't being treated well, and they've called for a ban on all the camel rides in Timanfaya. I think it's worth talking for a minute about the history of the camels of Lanzarote, because they are intertwined with the history of the island over centuries. They've been here since the 1500s, when they were actually floated across from Africa to be used as, workhorse is probably the wrong word, but work camels on the island. And they were integral to everything that went on for the following few hundred years. They delivered water to the villagers, they delivered the mail, they delivered food, they worked the farms with their human partners, turning the soil and doing all the things that cattle and horses did in other countries. They moved all the rock on the island that was needed to build the houses. So they really were very much a part of it. And as recently as 1949, the herd was 3,000 strong on the island. Inevitably, though, mechanisation arrived, the motor car arrived, and they were gradually made redundant. And of those 3,000, there's only about 400 of the offspring left on the island, and they are looked after by 40 families who provide the rides at Timanfaya. And those 400 camels do the Timanfaya rides. They do 3 shifts. But they also have what I would describe as ceremonial duties. So they do the 5th of January arrival of the kings onto the island for Christmas. They do lots of different events where they're sort of represented as a symbol of Lanzarote. I think it would be a real shame if they went. I think if tourists are too heavy, then maybe we should start weighing them before they're allowed to get on the camels. Everything I've seen from the people who look after the camels in that area, and I have spent quite a bit of time walking with them to and from Timanfaya and so on, I think they're very well looked after. So I think it would be a shame to lose the camel as a symbol of the island. And what would happen to them if they no longer had a job or a living, working alongside the people who look after them? I mentioned a couple of hang glider accidents. Well, one was a hang glider, the other was a paraglider. And they both crashed into hillsides this week. One ended up quite serious, the other wasn't too bad, but they both had to be rescued by helicopter because they were in quite inaccessible positions. We've been away this week, but I can tell there's been some very odd winds on the island. I can tell because when we got home, the cover had been ripped off our barbecue, and a lot of pots that we keep in a courtyard in our house had been swirled around. So I think there might have been sort of whirlwind type effects which perhaps caused an issue for these two. We wish them both luck, and hopefully they are both in hospital at the moment. Hopefully they will make a full recovery and be able to enjoy their sport of hang and paragliding in the future. Now, I promised we'd talk about these new rules on visitor registration on the island. Let me backtrack a moment and explain this to you. For years now, anyone checking into hotel accommodation in Spain or hiring a car in Spain has had some details transmitted to the Ministry of the Interior via a secure network that takes visitors' data. Now, that information currently, or up until this week, has included for car hire, passport number, name and address. For people staying in hotel accommodation, it's included a scan of the passport and their name and address. The only thing that's changed this week is that the Ministry of the Interior require more information. And in most cases, it's information that both the car hire company and the hotel already have anyway. And that additional information includes contact phone number, an email address, a method of payment for the service they're buying, and their relationship to other people travelling with them. In other words, to identify if it's a family with kids or if it's just a group of friends travelling together. That's all that's changed. Now, the British press, as they always do, are creating a real storm in a teacup over this. People are getting very stressed about it, saying, what do I have to do? How do I have to pass this information over? The simple answer is you don't need to do anything. Just do what you've always done. Come to Lanzarote, pick up your hire car. You might be asked a couple of extra questions. Go and check into your hotel. You probably won't be asked extra questions because they probably will already have your phone number and email address. But if they don't, they will ask you for it. And that information will be transmitted to the Ministry of the Interior as it always has been. You don't need to do a thing. Don't worry about it. It's a storm in a teacup. Now, the effigy of the Virgin Dolores. I need to give you a bit of background to Dolores. The effigy normally lives in the church at Mancha Blanca, and the reason she lives in the church at Mancha Blanca is because it was she that the people of Mancha Blanca prayed to during the Timan fire eruptions, when the lava from Timan fire was flowing towards the village of Mancha Blanca. And after they'd prayed to her, the lava stopped. And you can see clearly where it stopped because that's where the church is. It's right by the church, and the lava flow, you can see it coming down from the direction of Timan fire and literally stops outside where the church now is. So as you can imagine, Dolores is a very, very important saint to the people of Lanzarote. And we do a pilgrimage every year called the Romeria Los Dolores, where we go and pay tribute to her and thank her for protecting the village and the island from the lava of Timan fire. But 3 times in history, the effigy of the Virgin has been taken from Mancha Blanca to the main church in the capital at San Ginés in Arrecife. And last week was the 3rd time this happened. And that was because it was to celebrate 2 things: the 200th anniversary since the Timan fire eruptions and the 225th anniversary of Arrecife being established as a town, now a city, in Lanzarote. And what's happened all of those 3 times and happened this week is that the effigy of the Virgin was carried from the church at Timan fire all across the island to Arrecife and then installed in the church in Arrecife. And the procession carrying the effigy of the Virgin was joined by thousands and thousands of people, some who did the whole walk, others who joined in at various stages of it, and many more who waited in Arrecife for her effigy to arrive and be installed in the church. It was a very moving ceremony, and there are some fantastic photos all over the internet of people who went out and became part of it and enjoyed it. And she will now spend some time in Arrecife before eventually being returned to her rightful place in the church in Mancha Blanca. Now, let me remind you, please, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our channel. Somebody said to me the other day, how much does it cost? The answer is nothing. You can subscribe to any YouTube channel free of charge. But also click the notification bell. It's a little bell-shaped button which you'll see below. And that bell will mean that you'll get a reminder every time we post a new video. To give you a feel for it, we post 3 videos a week. This news video on a Saturday morning. We also post a video which is really just a story, me telling a story about the island each Tuesday. And then we post another one on a Thursday, which is generally Julie and I going somewhere on the island and filming it while we're out and about. We really do appreciate every view we get. Please give this one a like if you do indeed like it. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below. I always read all of the comments. So a couple of items of news to finish up with. You might recall that I mentioned that Jerry Hutch, who is an Irishman who is allegedly a gang leader in Dublin, but who has very close ties to Lanzarote, particularly Puerto del Carmen, was released on bail, having been arrested on charges of money laundering. He was given a €100,000 bail by the judge, largely on the grounds that he wanted to return to Ireland in order to stand for election. He failed to win a seat in that election, so I guess he's going to be coming back to Lanzarote in the not too distant future to stand trial. And a lot of work's going on in the background, trying to unravel the businesses that he's invested in and the prop on the island and the properties he's bought on the island, to try and understand A, where the money came from, and B, where it has gone to. And finally on the news, we had information this week that so far this year, 2024, and obviously we're almost at the end of it, more than 1/3 of the properties bought in the islands have been bought by foreigners. The actual figure is 36.4% of the properties that have been bought in 2024 have been bought by foreign people. This is really grist to the mill of the over-tourism protesters who are saying the reason we don't have enough accommodation for the people who live on the islands is because so much of it is being bought and exploited as holiday letting properties. Now, I think that is part of the issue. I don't think it's all of it. One of the biggest problems we've got here at the moment is that the letting law is very indistinct, and I think we have too many properties that can be let out privately, apartments and villas and so on. And a significant number of those are owned by wealthy investors. So it's not the couple who decide to invest their retirement fund into a property to earn a little bit of money from it. It's the investors who own 50, 100, sometimes 300 properties across the islands that they have just bought to exploit for profit. What's the answer? Well, I think the new letting law will help a lot because one of the provisions in it is that there's going to be a limit to the percentage of the overall housing stock in each area that can be given over to tourist letting. So the sooner that goes through Parliament and becomes law, the better, I think, in this respect. So now let's move on to the 3 things I would do next week if I was here, and I am here. I may be doing a few of these. The first is on Tuesday, December. Let me check, that is a Tuesday. Yes, it is. Tuesday, the 10th of December. And that is a musical show called Elf at the Teatro Municipal in Tias. That's the Municipal Theatre in Tias. It starts at 6 o'clock and it's on both the 10th and the 11th of December. So if you can't make the first, you may be able to make the second. Entry is completely free until the place is full. It's available for all the family, obviously. Every event they put on at that little theatre in Tias tends to be very, very good. So if you're around on the island and you fancy taking the family to enjoy a nice little musical, and I'm sure it will be, that's a good one to go and enjoy. Now, there's a Christmas theme to all 3 things this week for obvious reasons, because as far as I'm concerned, now that we're actually into December, we can talk about Christmas pretty much constantly through until the 6th of January. And the first of these, I mean, I've picked a specific day to do this, but you could do it any day, 14th, 15th, 16th of December. But go to Tinajo. Tinajo is the municipal town of the municipality of Tinajo, and they do Christmas really, really well. The lights are fantastic. The lights on the roundabout are epic. Their nativity display is different to everybody else's because it's life-size. So you'll be walking around little houses with life-size mannequins in them and live animals walking around them, and some beautiful, beautiful displays. Obviously, you need to go down there after dark. The sunset at this time of year is around 6 or 6:15. I would aim to get down there for about 7 o'clock. Enjoy a walk all the way up the main street, enjoy the lights, enjoy the Belen, which is the nativity display, and then go and get some tapas in one of the excellent little tapas bars down there. And if you don't fancy any of those, you can drop down the hill to La Santa, where there are several excellent restaurants. And finally, again staying with Christmas, is an event called Navilan, which arrives in Arrecife on Saturday the 14th of December, so that's next Saturday, but it runs all the way through until the 5th of January. And the heart of it is a Christmas fun fair, but also it has attached to it a Christmas market with about 20 stalls. But they also have a 32-metre high Ferris wheel, they have an ice skating rink, and they have a toboggan run, which is kind of like a water slide but without the water, that you go down on inflatables, and it just looks absolutely great fun. So you'll be able to do the Christmas market there, have a ride down the toboggan thing, do a bit of ice skating, get on the big wheel and enjoy the Christmas market as well. I can't promise they'll have glühwein, but I hope they do because I love it. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much once again for watching. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We really appreciate every single view, and we'll be back same time next week with your news from Lanzarote. Bye for now.